Welcome to the Explainer. Now, I know everyone's talking about AI chips, right? But today, we're going to talk about something way less glamorous, but honestly so much more important, the power grid. Because as you're about to see, the future of AI isn't just about compute. It's about copper, it's about concrete, and it's about the very real, hard limits of our physical world. So let's just dive right in with a single idea that I think completely reframes how we should be looking at the AI investment boom. It's a statement that really forces you to ask, is all this hype built on a solid foundation? Okay, so this right here, this is the heart of what we're talking about today. It suggests that the biggest threat to your AI investments isn't some new algorithm from a competitor. No, it's a boring old backlog for a utility transformer. The future of AI, it turns out, is being dictated less by Moore's law and a lot more by the nitty-gritty constraints of power grids, construction permits, and just raw materials. $3.34 trillion. Just let that sink in for a second. That was the peak market cap for NVIDIA. I mean, that number represents a massive global bet on AI. But a valuation that high, it just assumes growth can go on forever, right? So the question is, what happens when that digital dream slams into a physical wall? You know, what's really telling is a comment from OpenAI's CEO himself, Sam Altman, who flat out admitted, we're probably in a bubble. I mean, wow, that introduces this huge element of doubt. And it kind of forces us to look under the hood at the financial mechanics propping all of this up. Is this real organic demand, or is there something else going on? Well, check this out. This slide shows this really strange kind of circular flow of money in the AI world. You've got chip makers investing in their customers, who then turn around and use that exact same money to buy more chips. It's a thing called vendor financing. Now, it's not illegal or anything, but it can create this illusion of just massive runaway demand. One analyst put it perfectly. It's like a shovel seller paying miners to buy his shovels. It really makes you wonder how much of the demand is truly real. So, okay, if the financial foundation has a few cracks, what about the physical foundation? Let's make a pivot here. From the world of bits to the world of atoms, where the real constraints on AI are becoming absolutely impossible to ignore. You know, we all tend to think of the cloud as this weightless, kind of magical virtual thing. But the reality? The cloud is a factory. It's a physical place. And AI requires a massive, power-hungry, real-world industrial build-out. Success is just not about code anymore. It's about concrete, it's about steel, and it's about kilowatts. And the scale of this build-out is, well, it's staggering. McKinsey estimates a $7 trillion capital expenditure is needed for data centers in just the next 5 years. To put that into perspective for you, the entire U.S. capital expenditure for 2024 across all industries is just a little over $8 trillion. So you've got one sector demanding a build-out on the scale of an entire national economy. It's wild. Let's drill down and just look at one company, OpenAI. To power all its future models, OpenAI alone is planning to build out an extra 26 gigawatts in data center capacity. Now, I know a number like 26 gigawatts just sounds like a big, abstract number. So let's actually break down what that means in the real world. Okay, so a single gigawatt, that's roughly the output of a large nuclear power plant. So to run its software, OpenAI is planning to consume the equivalent power of 26 nuclear power plants. This isn't just some small upgrade. This is an absolutely unprecedented energy demand from a single company for a single purpose. And this crazy demand for energy is creating what a lot of experts believe is going to be the single biggest bottleneck for the entire AI industry. It's not about who can make the fastest chip anymore. It's about who can actually find a place to plug it in. And this marks a huge fundamental shift. For years, the whole conversation around AI was dominated by GPU supply. Can we get enough chips? Well, that problem is mostly solved now. The new bottleneck, the new scarce resource, it's not silicon, it's electricity. This power scarcity creates this, well, it's a terrifying risk for investors. It's called stranded capital, and it's the very real possibility of spending billions of dollars on the latest and greatest AI chips in data centers, only to find out you can't get a contract from the utility to power them up. Those chips then become the world's most expensive paperweights. Think about it. The value of compute is zero if you can't turn it on. This timeline really shows you the great mismatch at the heart of the whole AI boom. On one hand, you have the demand for compute, and it's driven by these annual chip releases from NVIDIA. It moves at lightning speed. But on the other hand, you have the supply of power, and it moves at a crawl. You can design a new chip in a year, but it can take over a decade to permit and build a new power plant. So you've got this demand curve that's just shooting for the moon, while the supply curve is, at best, a straight, flat line. Okay, so this mismatch, it creates a huge problem, no doubt. But it also creates a massive opportunity. So how does an investor actually play this? Let's try to build a playbook by looking at the physical infrastructure from the top down. So a top-down approach means you have to stop thinking like a tech investor for a minute and start thinking like a general contractor. You don't start with the shiny app, you start with the land and the permits. You figure out the key sectors that make the build-out possible, then you find the specific industries providing the tools, and then you can target the companies themselves, the real picks and shovels of the AI revolution. And when you do that, you realize that the AI revolution is really built on three kind of old-school sectors. You've got utilities to generate and transmit all that power. You've got industrials to manufacture the heavy equipment and actually construct the buildings. And you've got basic materials to provide the raw inputs, from the copper and the wires to maybe even the uranium for nuclear plants. This is the whole idea of the copper to compute ratio. For every shiny unit of compute you add, you need a proportional amount of physical stuff to make it work. And here's what that can look like in practice. Instead of just focusing on chip designers, you start looking at companies doing the essential physical grunt work. You need power infrastructure like grid operators or utilities. You need thermal management firms like Vertiv, because these server rocks get incredibly hot and need massive cooling systems. You need high-speed networking from companies like Arista to connect it all, and construction specialists like MCore to physically build these incredibly complex facilities. And then, of course, you have the raw commodities themselves, like copper for all the wiring and uranium for clean, reliable power. The key takeaway here is pretty simple, really. Follow the capital. We need to look at where the money has to flow to solve these physical problems, not just where all the speculative hype is pointing at the moment. But, and this is super important, you have to be specific. A really common mistake is just buying a generic clean energy ETF. The problem is a lot of those are packed with residential solar companies, which is not what data centers need. Data centers need 24/7, industrial scale, baseload power. That means you should be looking at grid operators and utility-scale power producers, not just rooftop panel installers whose power comes and goes with the sun. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. The AI revolution is this incredibly powerful engine, right? But it needs a massive amount of physical fuel to run. So are you invested in that engine, the power plants, the copper wires, the actual infrastructure? Or are you just invested in the exhaust, the flashy apps at the very end of the chain? Because as we've seen today, one of those simply cannot exist without the other.